Hi guys, this video is how to install FPP on your different devices such as Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone systems. Because people have different devices with different needs and there's different installation methods, I've got links down in the description to help you navigate. You can skip to the appropriate section or you can refer to different sections if you need to. Before you begin, you're going to need to know what your network configuration is and how you're going to incorporate your FPP device into this network. If you're not sure or want more information on networking, you can go to this video here. They'll also have a link to the FPP Manual that has step-by-step instructions on how to install FPP and other resources that might help you get going. That's down in the description below. Alright, let's get going. So what do you need? You're going to need a controller. With that controller, you're going to need an appropriate power source and also whatever network adapters you're going to need to configure and to incorporate that into your network. You're going to need a micro SD card. Don't skimp on this because the SD card is the heart and brain of your system, and it really doesn't make sense to skimp here when a good quality SD card is less than $12. So it really doesn't make sense. Be careful if you're buying from eBay and even sometimes Amazon, because there's a lot of counterfeit cards out there that don't have the speed or the capacity that they say. So be careful on that. Purchase a name brand. You probably only need 8 gig. It would be more than enough. And you really don't need anything real huge. FPP and the sequences don't take up a lot of room. And also you probably want to get one that's an application class. For example, here on my FPP, this is my master. You could see that I've got 11 schedules, 8 playlists, 33 sequences, 43 audio files, 2 command presets, 12 scripts, and it's a 32 gig card, which is way more than enough, and it's only at 19%, so it's way more than what you're going to need. So you're also going to need a network or USB cable, depending on which installation method you're going to use. You're going to need etching software, which there's 3 basic ones. The most popular is Balena Etcher and dotNet Disk Imager, but Raspberry Pi Imager is also a good one. You're going to need a card formatter. That's not necessary when you're burning the software. It does a low-level installation, but sometimes you might want to format the card to get any partitions or anything and get a fresh start, but it's not totally required. Okay, the configuration method. There's 3 ways to configure your initial FPP. One is the USB tether method, and that's where you connect a USB cable directly from your computer to the FPP device. The BeagleBone, Pocket Beagle, and the Pi Zeros support that. Your regular Pis do not support USB tethering. Wi-Fi tether, this is where you will communicate with your FPP device directly through a Wi-Fi signal, and that only works on devices that have Wi-Fi adapters that support AP mode. All of the Raspberry Pis support Wi-Fi AP mode, but some of the USB dongles that people use on the BeagleBones and Pocket Beagles do not support it. If you want to go that route, I'd highly recommend getting one of the USB adapters from Culp Lights. That way you know that it does support AP mode. And there's a network connection, and this will work with any device that's got an ETH0 port, and that's where you'll connect directly to your network. Okay, so the first thing is that you got to get FPP, and I put a link to that down in the description below. And so you'll go to the releases section, and you really should get the most current version, and in this case 5.5 is the latest. Scroll down to the asset section. Sometimes that asset section will be closed like that, so just expand it and then download the image that's appropriate for the device. If it's a BeagleBone, it'll be the one with the BeagleBone image. Pi, it'll be Pi image. We're going to download the Pi image. So while that's downloading, I'm going to fast forward, and then when it gets done downloading, we'll come back. Okay, so it's done now. Now insert the SD card into your FPP device and then go to the method that you want to etch your software, either the Balena Etcher or the dotNet Disk Imager. And I'm going to use dotNet Disk Imager to install this. So going to select the image, and you need to select what drive you're going to use, and that's going to be that one. Yep. And I'm going to wipe the device. If you want to wipe it, you can do it with dotNet Disk Imager, or if you want to do it with SD card formatter, you can. So it's been wiped, and now we're going to write it. Verify that you want to write it. Okay, now that that's complete, then take the card out, put it into your FPP device, and then go to the installation method that you're going to use. Okay, now we're going to burn our image with Balena Etcher. So go ahead and open up Balena Etcher, and then select your image that you want. We're going to select 5.5 pi image. Select the target. It says no drive detected, so you need to enter the drive into your computer. And if you get any of these messages popping up about formatting the disk from Windows, don't do that. That's because it doesn't recognize the device. It doesn't know how to handle the Linux-based file system. So don't format it from those windows. Just close those out. So we're going to flash it. It's going to ask you if you want to allow it to do that. Just go ahead and say yes. And at this point, I'm going to fast forward to the end. Okay, now it's complete. It says flash complete. If you want to flash another, you can. If you get any pop-up windows asking about formatting the disk, that's a Windows error because it doesn't recognize the file format. Don't format it or you're going to lose all your information. So at this point, put your SD card into your FPP device and then go to the installation method that you're going to use. Okay, so we're going to do Wi-Fi tethering. Like was previously mentioned, you need to make sure that your device supports the AP mode. The Raspberry Pi series, they support the AP mode inherently. If you're using a BeagleBone Black or Pocket Beagle, then just make sure that your Wi-Fi adapter supports AP mode. Just to make sure, I'd suggest getting your Wi-Fi adapter from culplights.com. If you're installing to a BeagleBone Black, that is the first time it's ever had FPP installed on it, you'll need to hold down the S2 button when you power it up. And that button is located here. So you can see where that button is, and then you're going to connect the power, and it's going to take about a minute. I'm going to connect the power to my device. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit so we don't have to just sit here. And it'll take about a minute for it to boot up. And when it does, you'll go down to your internet icon here. And when it's booted up, there will be a device that says FPP in your list. And you can see the devices there. So you'll log into that network. The password is Christmas with a capital C. And like I mentioned, if you were doing this to a BeagleBone Black, you would need to press that S2 button while you power it up. And once you're logged in, then you get to the device by typing 192.168.8.1, and that'll get you to the device. Okay, at this point, go ahead and skip to the initial configuration. Okay, this section is going to be on the network installation method. So what you need to do is install the SD card, connect a network cable to your network to your FPP device. Don't connect it directly to your computer. That requires some advanced configuration on your computer to get it to work, and we're not going to cover that in this video. So then we're going to power up the system. If it's the first time connecting to a BeagleBone device, then you need to press the S2 button on the BeagleBone, and that's this button here, located near the SD card slot. I'm going to hold that down for about 5 seconds after it's powered up, and then it's going to take about a minute for the system to boot up. So I'm going to fast forward a minute to get to my system being booted up. Okay, it's been about a minute, so now we need to log into the FPP device. Typically, you could type in fpp.local, but that doesn't always work for people depending on their network and their router. So there's some software out there called Angry IP Scanner and IP Scanner that you could use, but Xlights also has an X scanner that you could use to find your IP address. So if you open Xlights, you can go to Tools, X Scanner, and this will scan your network and find all the devices connected to the network, and if you have any defined in Xlights, it'll find out if they're online or not and notify you. So it'll take a few seconds for that to load, and it's still loading. And you can see here that it identified the FPP. It'll be the device that's indicated just FPP. So you see the IP address is 192.168.0.76. So you're going to use that IP address and log into your FPP device. And there's where you are. So now skip to the initial configuration. Okay, we're going to be using the USB tethering method to configure our FPP device. One of the things you need to be sure of is that you get a USB cable that actually transmits data. With all of the new devices coming out on the market that are USB charging, there's cables out there that only supply power and not data, so make sure that the cable you're using actually transmits data. You also want to have any network adapters that you're going to be using in your FPP device installed so that you can configure them. So then you're going to insert your SD card, and then if you're using a BeagleBone Black and it's the first time that you're installing FPP, then you're going to want to push the S2 button before you connect the USB cable, and you'll press and hold that for about 5 seconds after you connect the cable. If you're using a Pi 0, then you're going to connect it to this USB port because that's a USB port. The other one is just a power only port. You don't want to have any other power connected while you're doing the USB tethering. The USB cable is going to supply the power. So after you connect the USB cable, then wait about a minute, and I'm going to fast forward a minute to get my device boot up. I just plugged it in. Okay, it's been a minute. After your device boots up, then open a browser tab, and for Windows computers, you're going to type 192.168.7.2. And if you're using a Mac or Linux computer, you're going to type in 192.168.6.2. And at this point, we're ready to skip to the initial configuration section. Okay, we're going to do the initial setup. So if you have successfully installed it, you should be at this screen here. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to expand your storage settings. Click on Grow File System and say yes. And close. At this point, we really don't want to reboot if you're using the Wi-Fi tethering method, because then you'll have to log back on. Reboot will reestablish everything. So you can do some of the work without rebooting, but you can't do very much because there's usually not enough room on the disk to save it. So at this point, you've grown the file system, go back to status page, and you are in the initial setup. So go ahead and configure this section here, what mode it is. The host name, it's usually not a good idea to keep it FPP, so name it something unique. So we're going to call it FPP Pi Test. Host description, if you want to, you can. Share statistics. That's going to send information to the developers. If you haven't set it banner, it's going to keep reminding you. If you enable it, then it's going to send anonymous statistics to the developer. There's more on it if you go into the detailed video. Fetch cape logos from the vendors. There's not enough room on there for logos to show up from the vendors, so you can disable that if you want. Same thing with the serial numbers. The locale, set this up to your locale. That will enable you to use predefined holidays. Your time zone, you could select that, and your latitude and longitude. If you're hooked up directly to the internet, you could say look up time zone and look up location. So if you're doing Wi-Fi tethering, you can't do that right now because it doesn't have access to the internet. So you could come back and do that later. After that, you click on Finish Setup. Then you'll need to go to your network page and configure this for the network, how you're going to have it in your show. And like I previously mentioned, there I have a video. The link is up there that you can go see the video. In this case, I'm going to have this solely with a WLAN 0, so ETH0, I'll keep it DHCP. My WLAN 0, I'm going to set to static. I'm going to configure it. And then the net mask is almost always 255.255.255.0. The gateway is going to typically be the IP address of your router. Most routers typically start with a 1, but there are quite a few that end in 254, so you just need to make sure you know what that is. Since I'm doing wireless, I have to define my SSID and my pre-shared key. If you go to this drop down, it'll list all the available access points. So select it. It's preferable if you use a 2G connection. A lot of the devices do not support 5G. And 2G actually goes a lot farther transmission, and it goes through walls better, so that's actually a better choice to go to the 2.4. Then select your pre-shared key. Going to update your interface. That saves it. It doesn't restart the network, it just saves it. Go to your host in DNS. It previously gave you a warning about that. So we're going to go to manual. Typically, you want to have DNS server to be your router. and typically 8.8.8.8. Gonna update the DNS, and then you should be good to go. After that, it should be up and running. Okay, at this point, you can power down the FPP device. You can click on shut down, and then install this device into the network, how you are going to run it and how you have it configured, and then power it up. I'm going to fast forward while I do that. Okay, looks like it's booted back up. So if you look, the old address isn't going to work if you try and connect to it. So you got to connect to it with the IP address that you configured. Okay, and there's the device. If you had configured this to be DHCP, then you're not sure what the IP address is going to be. So you could use a few different things. You can look into your router to see what address it assigned. There's some software out there, Angry IP Scanner, IP Scanner. Xsites also has a tool called Xscanner. So you can go to Xsites, go to Tools, Xscanner, and it'll scan your network and find all of the devices that you have. Middle identified devices you have configured, let you know if they're reachable, and then also to all the other devices. So it takes a couple minutes for it to log in and go through everything. Alrighty, so you can see here, this is our FPP BB test. That's what we had configured and hooked up. So it's 192.168.1.252, and that's how you could get to it. So now that you're in here, you really should have your FPP device configured in a manner that it could reach the internet. And if so, you want to go Help, About. And then you can see here that it says there's an update available. It's always a good idea to keep with the most current update in case there's been any bugs. So we're going to upgrade the FPP. This will take sometimes 2 to 3 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, just depending on how big the upgrade is. So we're going to upgrade, and I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the end. Okay, so now it's complete. You could say it says restarting FPPD update complete. Close that. And typically you'd get an orange banner up here saying to reboot sometimes if it needs a reboot. But in this case it's saying that there's a major upgrade available, FPP 5.5. So like I mentioned, it's always good to keep with the most current one. So in this case you'd go ahead and do upgrade FPP. The major upgrade sometimes can take 15 minutes or so, just depending. So plan that around if you have a show or something going. But I'm not going to go through this because it's not part of this video. Just wanted to get you up and running. So this gets you up and running, ready to run your show, and you're good to go. Have a good one. Enjoy.